Okay, welcome to the next episode of MIDI Unscripted. Garbage trucks? Oh boy. It's okay. All right. Welcome to the next episode of MIDI Unscripted. Okay, so why am I standing in front of the camera instead of hiding behind the camera like I usually do? Well, there's a couple good reasons for that. One, we're in the middle of a damn pandemic, and there's no rules anymore. This is all the new normal. But a real reason for this is the fact that I felt it was only right since I asked so many of you to do the same thing. I put the call out on a few different social media platforms, asking you to show me how you're using your Blooper with MIDI. For my context, I do the MIDI troubleshooting emails for Chase Bliss Audio, as well as help many of you over text, over Skype, through Facebook Messenger, all kinds of places. And my expertise is mostly, well, here. So, pedal board setup. Man, that thing's heavy and I have not been working out. Anyway, what I usually do is somebody will email me and they're saying, hey, you know, my MC6 doesn't seem to be sending MIDI clock to my tonal recall. Can you help me with that? So then what I would do is I would have them maybe send me a picture of their setup, and I would set everything up the same. Take the Morningstar, take a MIDI cable, MIDI box, TRS cable, tonal recall. And then I have the same setup, and then we kind of look at that together. Every once in a while I get an email from someone who has a pretty, although cool, complicated setup that I just can't duplicate it at home. And even though that bothers me, I can get by with it a little bit because it's not very frequent. It's, once or twice a month. And just because I can't duplicate it at home doesn't necessarily mean that we can't figure out a solution. We often find that it's just a box was unchecked on the editing software, or the wrong cable was being used, or a bad cable was being used. It's always just some dumb little thing. What we found with Blooper is that a lot of people are using it with those complicated setups I was referring to, like modular synth type setups, keyboard synth setups, computer DAW setups. I use Logic Pro. I have it running right now, recording through this mic. And I can help people with that, but if you're using Ableton, that presents some sort of a challenge because I can't just jump on and say, oh yeah, it was this one little thing you left unchecked. On a side note, I actually am going to start learning Ableton, thanks to Joel and Sean Harold at Edge of Breakup, who's going to get me started on that. But the point is that these little setups where, these big setups where I wasn't able to help people, were becoming more and more and more with Blooper, and I can't let that happen. And I also can't have every single piece of gear in the world because, man, that would be cool. But it's just kind of not possible. It would blow my mind, right? So what I decided I should do is reach out to you people, at least for now, because even though everyone approaches this music thing slightly differently, like using a 1938 ribbon mic for a voiceover on a video, there are similarities. So maybe someone who's using a particular type of synth setup or a particular type of sequencer can show me a video of how they're having success, and then somebody else will see that, and then they'll go, oh, hey, I didn't know you needed that one cable. I didn't know you needed that one button pressed. It's always like something so simple. So I reached out and I got a couple different setups from people around the world, and let's just show those in a video. And maybe some of you will see things that kind of like make that light bulb go off. Anyway, without further ado, because I don't like being in front of the camera, to be honest. Alright, so first up we have Chris, who goes by Calc, and he's joining us from Brighton, England, where he is the European product specialist for Novation. And he's been having success running MIDI from his SL Mark III into Blooper. Let's take a look.
Hey everyone, it's Calc here, Novation product specialist by day, but also a huge fan of this Chase Bliss Blooper looping pedal. I've been really excited and following the development of this on the videos that Nobs was putting out, charting the sort of research and development of the Blooper. I'm a big fan of loopers myself, but one thing that really caught my attention with this is the fact that it's MIDI controllable. And, you know, at Novation we make a lot of MIDI controllers, so I was very, very keen to see kind of how this would integrate into my kind of setup. So just thought I'd make a little video just to kind of go through how I'm using Blooper with MIDI. Now, the first thing is getting MIDI into Blooper, and that is basically it's going in on a tip, ring and sleeve type of jack connection like this. This is a socket here that works for external foot switches and also for MIDI, and the MIDI comes in on the ring. So I took one of the Novation MIDI dongles that we supply with circuits and Launchpad Pro Mark 1s and all that sort of thing, and I basically rewired it so that I have pin 5 on the MIDI connection here going to the ring, pin 2 is going to the sleeve, and nothing is connected to the tip. Now that was great, that gave me 5-pin MIDI into the Blooper and allowed me to control the various parameters of it. But one thing I really wanted to do as well was also use the foot switch. And using the foot switch allows me to kind of basically keep my hands all free, ready for playing and recording directly into loops. I wasn't quite sure how to do that, so I reached out to Chase Bliss and they've come up with this really, really handy kind of workaround, and that's to use one of these cables. You can see here that we've got a tip, ring and sleeve, and we've actually got 2 sockets and they connect directly to the tip and the ring. Now, I mentioned before, the foot switch goes into Blooper on the tip, and so I plug the foot switch into the tip socket. I have my MIDI dongle here and that's connected to connect to the ring. So that's a really, really useful way of being able to use both MIDI and the foot switch at the same time. Now, I've got all connected to a Novation 49SL Mark III here. Now this is a full sequencer alongside being a great controller keyboard, and I've made a complete mapping for the Blooper. So I have access to absolutely everything here on the Blooper directly in front of me on the SL. So for example, if I want the modifiers on, I can just switch them on here as I want. One of the great things is I can actually sequence all that directly in the SL, so I can actually sequence the on and off messages and all sorts of things. It's really, really quite a powerful combo. But also I'm clocking Blooper via MIDI using the 49SL as well. Now, in order to do that, I've made this switch here, which is clock on and off. And this is sending a value of 127. Anything that isn't 0 basically will turn MIDI clock on, and when I press this again it sends a value of 0, so it now turns it off. And this is a toggle switch, so it will need to be on a toggle switch. It caught me out originally because I had this on a momentary switch, so it was always sending a value of 0 when I lifted my finger off, so it was never actually in sync. But now I've got this onto a toggle, it's all working great. The other thing is I've got on this particular pot, I don't know if that's visible on the camera, but I've got the note divisions as well. And this I set to value 1. And the reason for that is that it gives me half a bar, basically two beats, if you like, of leeway before using the foot switch. It will go into looping. And that's really useful for me because I can get my fingers ready to play and then hit the foot switch with a little bit of space to get in time. So I'm going to start up a sequence here. So I'll just hit play on the SL Mark III. I'm not using any computers here, by the way. Everything is all coming from various different devices in the room. So I'll go over to an Octatrack, which I've got here, and I'll just bring up this drum loop. So there we go, we've got a nice beat going. I'll go back to the blooper. I need to just erase everything that's in the looper at the minute. So I'll just press this button and you can see I've got that mapped to erase everything. That's all good. Now I'm going to use a Yamaha Reface CP Rhodes piano sound here, and when I'm ready I'm going to hit the record pedal within sort of a 2-beat kind of frame, and then it'll go into record and I should be able to just loop from there. So now in time, which is great. So once again, if I want to, I'll just start recording over the top of this. So there we go. Now, if I go to my blooper mappings here, I've got control over things like the layers, for example. Just bring it back to that first layer. Bring up the stability. I've got on my buttons here all the various different modifiers. So, and the great thing is it gives me a label. So if I press here, I'm on smooth speed for mod A, dropper for mod A, trimmer for mod A, then I go to mod B, step speed, scrambler and filter. So that's really neat. You know, you can use this in a really solid way. Just very quickly, I'm going to go to the smooth speed here. And one thing I really like about this, and specifically with the SL Mark III, is I can actually do some step kind of entry here. So if I go into record mode, I'm going to press a pad here, this first pad, and I'm going to set this to 96. Now the great thing about using it this way is that all values sort of as multiples of 16 are going to actually be the pitch controls, and even in the smooth speed. So that's really useful. So I've got to 96 here, which is kind of standard speed, I believe. And then let's go to, let's say 80. There we go. On this step, I'm going to go down to 48. And on this step, let's go to 32. So if I hit play now, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but now that's moving in time because I put them on the beat. So let's just turn that modifier on. I can also turn on let's go to the filter, and I'll just turn it on here. So I've got all this automation controlling the blooper in real time, and it's really, really nice. So I'll just take the stability off, and then I can just switch off the modifiers when I want. And let's go back to the Octatrack, bring in another beat. We'll go to an SH101, why not? And I'll hit record. So there we go. That's just a quick look of how I'm using the Blooper. I'm using great mapping on the SL Mark III to give me access to all of the features on the Blooper. Also using that MIDI clock as well to keep everything nice and tight. So yeah, I mean, basically it takes away the error, the margin for error when I'm actually recording my loops. So yeah, so that's how I'm blooping.
Nice, Calc. Thank you for that. I actually think I could listen to that all day.
So there we go, got a nice beat going. I'm blooping.
All right, let's have a little recap and look at what Calc was using to control Blooper. All right, I don't want to take up all of your time with this, but I know this does help some of you. I know that I like to see things laid out like this, so I'm just going to go over Chris's setup really quick and what he had going on. So he had the Novation, and he was coming out of there with a MIDI cable, just a 5-pin MIDI cable. And that doesn't go into a Chase Bliss pedal. You have to have either a MIDI box and then a TRS cable, but what Calc was using, and I have an example here, is a cable that goes from MIDI to TRS, and as he stated, pin 2 goes to the sleeve, pin 5 goes to the ring, and nothing goes to the tip. So that's what that cable looks like. Here's one made by Step Audio. Disaster Area also makes these. I don't have one of theirs on hand, but that's what that looks like. Now that would go into the MIDI jack on the Blooper, but he's also using a foot switch. So he has to use one of these cables, and so that would plug in here, and the MIDI would go into the ring side, and the foot switch goes to the tip side. So he has that special MIDI to TRS thing going on. So we'll just go like that down to this cable going into Blooper, right? And then the other side is going to his foot switch. So basically his setup just looks like this. Obviously there's an audio path, but we're just tracing MIDI here. And that's pretty much it. So here is Calc's setup drawn out for you. If you want more detail on that Y cable, this is how you would wire that up. I will also put a link to this diagram in the description below. Next up we have Justin, who goes by Rembrandt Davies on Reddit. Justin appeared to me because I was trying to help someone with the Elektron Digitakt. Justin comes to us from Austin, Texas, where he's involved in several different musical ventures. The one we're about to hear is his solo project, which he calls Bernard. And he's running, man, he's got this crazy setup on several different tables, stuff on the floor, things over here, things over there. It's like perfect chaos. But it works, man. It sounds incredible, as you're about to hear. So let's have a listen.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin. I go by a stage moniker of Bernard, which is conveniently my middle name. I also play in the synth pop band called Neosho, and I am in a what I call punk prog jazz quartet called Dream Eater. But this rig is for my solo set. This is for the Bernard moniker, and I'm not sure how to explain the mess. It is a work in progress. I'm taking advantage of the quarantine to get all the cables out and figure out how I want this stuff connected. So right now, we've got a sequence running on the Octatrack. It's MIDI synced to my Digitakt, and that is outputting and syncing the Chase Bliss stuff. So, sorry Chase Bliss, but I'm going with the Disaster Area box. I did that because I thought I might get Maris at some point, and this works with the Chase Bliss pedals or the Maris pedals, which both have the TRS MIDI thing going on. So that's going over here to the Mood and the Blooper. The Blooper is synced with the Digitakt. So what I'm doing, I found that it's really tough to do quarter note pulses That's for reeds. Ignore that. Yeah, I'm a sax player. Spoiler alert. So I'm syncing the Digitakt to, this is MIDI 54. I don't know if you can see that. 54, and then your handy-dandy manual, 54 is under Note Division's, is your Note Division setup. And so I'm setting it a value of 1, which is half note. I found half note is easier to sync than quarter note. It's easier to sync than whole note. Yeah, so go figure. So, signal path. Got this fancy pants saxophone. This microphone is going through a preamp, which is going through these pedals, which I'm going to leave off. Back into the preamp. I go out to the board in a live scenario with this rig, but I also come out of the amp output, which is wired underneath here. And that is coming in through this router, which I have coming in to go into Octatrack sampling, but I can jump it with this fancy board brain device. It's basically a what's called a half normal patch bay. So I'm basically duplicating the sax signal and then patching it into the output that is then going into Blooper. And then that's going into this Warm Audio 412 preamp. So I've got the Octatrack coming in stereo. The mic you're probably hearing me on coming in here. I'm recording my voice, hopefully, with this WA-47. 87. Look at that. Sweet. And then this is coming straight out of the Mood, because I wanted to just record a track to deal with that. So hopefully, if everything works out, you'll see the syncing. So for the purposes of this video, you are not hearing this mic in real time. I've got the Blooper on dry kill. I just didn't want to confound it with stuff. So there's no effects coming on this mic. This mic is basically going preamp straight into the Blooper. So the acoustic sax you hear is coming from the Warm Audio 87. So I'll get my headphones on here, and yeah, let's see what we got. I've got the sync working. That's fun. I don't know what else to say. These pedals are freaking fun. I love the syncing. Again, half note syncing seems to be working better for me. So shout out. I love that no matter what I do with the time stuff, it doesn't lose the actual loop, the original loop. So even if it's out of time with some of the pitchy things, it still comes back when I turn the pitch stuff off to the actual length of the sample of the loop, which is just mind-boggling to me. So really cool pedal, nerds. Thanks for making it. Bye.
See? Wasn't that cool? I feel like if Justin or Bernard were like a local thing, I would go see it all the time. Well, not right now. But I mean after the lockdown thing, then I'd go see it like all the time. Anyway, thank you, Justin. Let's take a look at how Justin was routing everything to control his blooper. Okay, Justin drew this diagram out for me, which is super helpful. He had a lot going on in his video, but we're just going to focus on this part for our purposes. So the MIDI clock itself was being generated by the Octatrack, and he was telling me that it doesn't produce a signal robust enough to get MIDI all the way to the Chase Bliss pedals. So the Digitakt acts as kind of a glorified MIDI relay. So MIDI generated by the Octatrack, also drum and bass coming out of the Octatrack, coming out with a MIDI cable, going to the Digitakt, which is buffering the MIDI signal, relaying it, and it's also generating the CC messages. If you recall, he was selecting the note divisions. That all gets sent out with a MIDI cable to the MIDI box, and then TRS cables to the two pedals. So a lot going on, but when you can see it like this, it really helps kind of break things down. Next up, we have Matteo from BC, who I found on Instagram, and he's on there as Renovari Music. And the thing about Matteo and myself is that we were both kind of learning this thing at the exact same time, this like Logic USB MIDI blooper thing. And he was asking me some questions, and I didn't quite have the answers, and he got it working before I did. And so I was trying to ask him things, and he wasn't sure why it wasn't working for me. And it got to be one of those things where we're just trying different things, and everything just started working. And we looked online and couldn't find anything as far as a video on how to explain this stuff. So we're here to change that. Without any further delay, let's have a look at Matteo's video.
Hey guys, my name is Matteo. I'm from BC, and this is how I use MIDI with Blooper. So yeah, I'm super stoked to have this all hooked up now. It's been great seeing Paul explain to everyone how to do it. I actually figured out how to do it before the videos came out, so props to me. But yeah, it's super simple. TRS going to the MIDI box, and then I route it into my Scarlett. From there, it's super simple to have it sync. Just go to synchronization, MIDI. I have an older version of Logic, so it may look different for you. Destination 1 is the Scarlett, and then you want to have it on pattern. And honestly, just like that, it's ready to go. And it's always on time, and it's super helpful for writing songs and making crazy sounds.
All right, thank you, Matteo, and thanks for your help. So a much simpler setup than we saw previously with Justin's. But, sometimes that's all it takes. And that's what we're here to show is, everyone does it differently. It's not to say that Matteo is a simpler person. Maybe right behind the camera was Justin's rig. I mean, you never know.
MIDI.
Sometimes that's all it takes. A MacBook Pro, an interface, MIDI box, a blooper, you're up and running. Making cool ass bloops like Matteo's. Now let's have a look at Matteo's setup. He was coming out of his MacBook Pro with, I believe, a standard USB cable going into the Scarlett, and then from the Scarlett, 5-pin MIDI to the MIDI box. And then he's just running TRS MIDI straight into Blooper. Very simple setup, very effective. I've used a similar setup. In place of Scarlett, I've used the Roland UM1. So what that is it's a USB cable, and then out of the other end of that is a standard MIDI cable. So that's the Roland UM1. That's the one I showed in my Blooper MIDI DAW video. Two ways of doing a similar setup. Scarlett basically does the same thing. But it's highly effective. I've had super great success using this in my studio lately, and that's all it takes. Next up we have Enrico, who goes by the name Mr. Henry. And he joins us from Varese, Italy. It's way up in the north of Italy. And I found Enrico on, I think, Facebook Messenger. And he wanted to show me what he was doing with his Boss RC50 loop station. Pretty simple controls, but again, it's a setup that works. So let's look at what Enrico's doing.
Hello everybody, I am Mr. Harry and this is my Blooper MIDI setup. This is my guitar. The signal comes from the guitar and goes to this pedal board here, out of the delay. Then it goes into the RC50. From the RC50 goes into the marvelous Blooper. Blooper is connected to the RC50 via MIDI and via the MIDI box. I moved a jumper inside the MIDI box so I can use a split cable, and in one side there's the MIDI box, and in the other side, as you can see here, connected by this jack. Okay, has started. Okay, is connected the remote pedal, so they are perfectly synced. That's it. Stop. And that's it. Bye.
I like what Enrico is doing there. It looks like a super fun room. He wanted to send me the video in a couple days, but I told him I was approaching the deadline for this, and so he kind of just whipped that together real quick. So I appreciate that, Enrico.
Pedalboard, MIDI, marvelous blooper.
Let's have a look at how Enrico had everything wired up. He drew me this cool diagram that shows both setups. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so here's Enrico's setup. He drew this diagram out for me, which is greatly appreciated. And I love how it just kind of looks like a scientist's like scrapbook entry. Love this kind of stuff. Anyway, he had two different setups. So here, this one up here is what he had going on with the Beatstep. And then this one down here is what he had going on with the RC50. So on the Beatstep, he has a MIDI cable coming out, going to the Chase Bliss MIDI box, and then a TRS cable going to Blooper. Very simple setup. Most of what was going on there is just setting up the Beatstep for those actions. And then he had everything labeled off with tape. That's the same way I do it. Cool way to do it. Now on the RC50 part of this, let's start with the RC50 itself. MIDI cable coming out to the MIDI box. And then I think he's using the MIDI splitter, kind of like the one I just showed previously with Calc. And then he's splitting off the MIDI side to Blooper, and the foot pedal part is coming in to the tip of Blooper. And then here's kind of his like diagram of that. So on the ring we have MIDI, tip we have the tap pedal. And that's exactly how that would work. So again, another kind of complicated looking setup in the video, but when you can see it like this, it kind of breaks it all down. He mentioned something about the jumper. I'm not sure. Flip the jumper so I can use both sides of the TRS split cable. Not exactly sure what that is. As far as I know, you'd want that jumper to be on the ring side, but maybe there's some goofy thing going on I'm not fully aware of. Thanks for drawing this out, Enrico. I really appreciate it, and it's cool to have this hand-drawn stuff. Next up, we have a guy named Andy, and Andy's been using his iPad to control Blooper via Bluetooth MIDI, which I've dabbled in that a little bit, but I don't know. I still think like iPad touch controller type of interfaces are really the best way to do MIDI, but I feel like I need to explore that a little more. But let's take a look at what Andy's doing, and let's learn a thing or two.
Hey, I'm Andy Othling, and I'm going to show you how I use MIDI with my Chase Bliss Audio Blooper. And I'm actually using it in a wireless fashion. I'm controlling Blooper from my iPad via Bluetooth. So the way that's actually physically connected, you can't actually see because it's all under my pedal board. So I've got a Yamaha Bluetooth MIDI adapter, which has a MIDI in and out dongle that's connected, and that is connected directly to a Chase Bliss Audio MIDI box, which is powered and taped under my pedal board right now. And that Bluetooth MIDI adapter is plugged into that MIDI box from Chase Bliss Audio. And it's actually powered from that box too, so I don't have to give it any additional power. And then from the MIDI box, I go take some TRS cables out, and I'm coming into the side of my Chase Bliss pedal. So I'm coming into the side of Blooper right here with a TRS cable. And then I'm using an app on my iPad called Ribbon, R-I-B-N, that, I'm sort of just starting to delve into this iPad work, but basically I was hoping to sort of replace the dip switch functionality on Blooper. So the ability to apply LFOs to different parameters and such. When you're using it directly on the pedal with the dip switches, you've got one speed for all the different knobs. You can be ramping a bunch of knobs at the same time, but all at the same speed. This allows me to do it at different speeds and do different things with them and actually draw in the LFO with my finger. So let me show you that. I'll put in a little loop here, and then we'll try it. All right, that's nice. So I got that loop locked in. Now, the fun thing about this app is that I can choose, the only two things I can choose for these MIDI LFOs are the channel and the CC number that it's sending on. So I have my Blooper on channel 4. So I've got the app set to channel 4 here. I've got the MIDI CC set to 19 and 14 for these two LFOs that I'm using. And those control the volume of Blooper, so the output. And the other one I'm controlling is modifier B. So that means when I have this modifier on, I'm controlling whatever it is. So if it's right here, I'm in pitched, quantized pitch mode, or I could be controlling a filter or a kind of a scramble algorithm. Right now I'm in the pitch mode, so I will turn that on. So we just pitch shifted that loop there and reversed it. Now I'm going to draw in a LFO, a sweep of that knob with my finger here on the iPad. So the app remembers the speed and the way I drew in that LFO, and that's how it's going to play it on the pedal. And then same thing with the volume, and now this is cool too, because like I was saying, I don't have to do these at the same speed. I can do a very quick volume LFO and make it sort of a tremolo sound maybe. Let's see what that sounds like. So that's cool. So we got LFOs independent of each other. And if we want to, we can actually turn the LFO part of it off and just have it be just the value you pick. So I can say, I just want the pitch to be here. Like that. And you just tap up here. Now you're up there. Slow it down. So that's it. That's how I'm controlling Blooper with MIDI from my iPad.
Well, thank you, Andy. You know, that sounded really good. You should think of pursuing that. Like I was saying about touchpads, like they just seem like the most natural and intuitive way to affect a pedal over MIDI. I don't know. I mean, we all carry phones. We're all kind of used to that action. It just seems like a no-brainer in a way. And it looked like it was working like perfectly. I guess those of us watching, and myself included, we need to up our game and start iPadding all of our pedals. Let's have a little recap and look at Andy's setup. He had this cool thing. It's a Yamaha Bluetooth MIDI device. It looks like that. It's just two like MIDI cable ends, you know, like a regular MIDI cable that would go into a 5-pin jack. And one end is for MIDI in and the other end is for MIDI out. So if you were using this with conventional MIDI devices, the other end would need to be plugged into the MIDI out. So you're sending and receiving. But with Chase Bliss, we're just sending to the pedal. So I think, Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you only have to have the one end going into the MIDI box. And then from the iPad, that's the Bluetooth part. That's going into this device. The MIDI box is plugged into power, of course, and is also powering not only the MIDI box, but this device. So we're wireless from here into this Yamaha Bluetooth, into the MIDI box, and then from the MIDI box to old Bloopy over here, TRS cable, that's all. So the MIDI messages are being sent to this device via Bluetooth from the iPad app, and then the MIDI box gets the signal to Blooper. That's all. Very simple setup. Oh, before I forget, the only other thing you need is that Andy finger. Well, that does it for this episode of MIDI Unscripted, the Hive Mind. I've already been receiving several emails from those of you that would like to be in a future episode demonstrating how you are successfully getting MIDI delivered to your Blooper. So until next time, stay safe out there and take care of yourselves. Okay, it's alright. I mean, if you think about it, I know it's a necessary thing. We'll just leave it at that. However, if you're working with audio, and that's the priority, garbage trucks bring more garbage than they take away. That's all I'm gonna say about that.